June 11th of 2019, my daughter, and my wife and I's daughter, my wife is Andrea, and I couldn't do or have any kind of story without her in my life. We've been married for 36 years. And,
congratulations.
yeah, thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Yeah, but on June 11th of 2019, our daughter Christie, who lives in northeast Texas around the Texarkana area, experienced cardiac arrest on the job at work. And never had a problem or an issue with her heart her whole life. Fortunately, she was at work because if she would have been at home, she would have been at home with her infant son, our grandson at Weston, who would have been 2.5 months old at the time, and they live out in the country, so she wouldn't have had help. So, this had to happen for a reason. Fortunately, it happened where she had, what I say, God lined up angels to help her. And she got help with CPR and was transferred to Christie St. Michael Hospital in Texarkana, Texas. A lot of things happened at that point in time, but to sum it up, two doctors, Dr. Gregory White and Dr. Kevin Hayes. Dr. Kevin Hayes is her cardiologist. They discovered that Christie was born with a birth defect in her heart, and at 29 years old, never knew about it. We never knew about it. And her pulmonary artery was on the wrong side of her heart her whole life. So that had to be corrected, and she ended up being flown. Her and her husband Brian were flown in a medical transport plane to Cleveland, Ohio, to Cleveland Clinic.
Wow.
And Dr. Hani Najim, who is a heart surgeon there and does a lot of work, pediatric heart surgeries, and performed Christie's corrective surgery in the pediatric heart hospital, because of the fact that, unfortunately, when people have this sort of thing with their heart, it doesn't always work out. And you hear about kids on the playing field when they're in their teens dying on the practice field or the playing field. And she played sports. So we were very blessed, and she's thriving now. I want to say that. And I also want to say, Bob, that our family didn't pray any harder than anybody else's family. And sometimes the collective we don't always get what we're praying for. And I don't have answers for that. I just know that the Lord has a plan for us. And I just know that we have to have faith that His plan is ultimately all of our purpose. And we're just so very blessed that our prayers were answered the way we were praying for.
John Bain is joining us today here on the Meeting House on Faith Radio. It is the Winter 2023 Christian Product Expo in Columbus, Georgia. This is the Meeting House on Faith Radio. Well, the book is called Christie's Journey. The Beat Goes On. Of course, I know that your family is rejoicing that Christie actually survived this incident. And like you say, we don't understand God's ways, but we know that even in the midst of our tragedy, God is there. We know that some survive situations like this. We know that some do not. And we, of course, we lack the understanding to know why, but yet we can understand the God who has His hand on our lives. So let's move into some of the spiritual lessons that you and your daughter and your wife really learned as you walked through this whole series of events.
Well, one of the first things that I experienced when I got the news what had happened to Christie, and we were up in southeast Iowa, 11.5-hour drive from where we were at to where she was at, and I was waiting for my wife to get home from her job. had transitioned. We had been living in the Quad Cities area in Bettendorf, Iowa, and we transitioned to our home in Wayland, which was an hour and a half southwest of Bettendorf. So my wife was still working up in the Quad Cities area. So I was by myself at home, and I was just getting things ready because we were going to be leaving as soon as my wife arrived. And all I did was drop to my knees in my dining room, got on the floor in the dining room floor, and prayed to God to save Christie. And when there's nothing, when you think there's nothing you can do, you can always pray.